College football nerds. Going to talk a little Alabama and LSU, sort of a second course to what we did last week. And if y'all want just our normal long review format where we talk a lot, we do have a review. I'll link it in the description, or preview of that game we put out last week. We're going to do something a little different. Y'all let us know in the comments if you like this format. If you hate it, tell us how we can improve it. But basically what we're going to do is I'm taking a position. We're going to do two videos. I'm taking a position of LSU. Josh is taking a position of Alabama. I'm going to give him 5 reasons why I think LSU can win this game. We're going to try to do something a little beyond the obvious. That way we can get some interesting conversation going. And then each person will have the opportunity to rebut in the respective videos. So we're going to do two videos. 5 reasons why LSU can beat Alabama. 5 reasons why Alabama can beat LSU. Let's get into it. Before we do, like, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. All right, Josh, for my number one, I think Joe Burrow, accurate quarterback, consistently good quarterback, combined with a very physical offensive line, is going to make it really hard for Alabama to get off the field on third down. And we've seen this a little bit. We haven't had a lot of good data points for Alabama against good defenses this year. We've seen it a little bit where they couldn't get off the field on third down this year. Not a whole lot. Alabama's defense is underrated. But we saw it last year against Georgia in the SEC championship game, where Georgia came out, physical offensive line, good running game, punched them in the mouth, but really what kept Georgia going and scoring and put Bama behind the 8 ball early was Jake Fromm being just throwing darts against that Alabama secondary, and Alabama not having a great pass rush to really impact him. And that's my number one. I think it's going to be a real problem for Alabama to try to get off the field on third down, which is obviously going to lead to points. We saw that Georgia versus Florida this weekend. Georgia was 12 of 18 on third down and got them points and got them a win.
So if I were to counter with that, I guess I would say, well, first, I think it's a fair point. I do think Alabama's probably going to have a hard time getting LSU off the field, and a lot of it's due to the RPO concepts. The RPO is hard to keep a team from getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yards to carry. And the reason really is that you have to drop linebackers into coverage. We saw that with Florida, where they were really trying to be strict defense, and they got gashed with a run because they had vacated the linebackers. We saw Clemson, even though they were able to stop Alabama, they still gave up significant yardage on the ground. I think where I'll counter a little bit is, one, LSU is really only about a yard per carry better than they were on average last year, even with Edwards-Helaire and the new scheme. And they were 7.6 yards per carry against Georgia 2 weeks before, or 2 games before, I should say. They went 2.3 against Alabama. So there's some, justification for the fact that they can slow down in these games. The other thing I'll say is that Alabama's run defense, you can look at their stats and sort of think they're good at one level, and we did some tweets about this. They fall from about 2.7 yards per carry to, I think, over 4 yards per carry when you look at first halves versus second halves. Their numbers in the run game have been really good to start games, and then they've fallen off late. And I think, maybe Alabama is a better run team than a lot of people give them credit for. But I do think LSU is going to run it quite well. I'd be surprised if they don't.
So my number 2 is actually a counterpoint to yours, in that I don't necessarily think LSU is going to use Clyde Edwards-Helaire as much as just a straight up running back. We saw this against Florida, which they knew they were a good defense, but they knew Florida had some issues at linebacker, and Alabama has similar issues, though I don't think as severe, in that they've got freshmen playing middle linebacker. They've got freshmen calling the plays at linebacker. They've got freshmen having to cover on third down, having to cover in general, and neither one of us are super high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a runner. He's not bad, but he's not, Adrian Peterson. But where he's really solid, and we saw this on tape, he's a damn good route runner. And he's a gamer in the passing game. And I think that's going to cause a huge problem for these linebackers, because not only are they going to have to cover the middle of the field against a team that has the best wide receivers they've faced this year, finally a good set of wide receivers to challenge this Alabama secondary. They're also going to have to keep an eye on this running back. And if we saw anything from even the Arkansas game, Alabama does not like to cover running backs out of the backfield, and they usually give up some pretty big plays there.
So I guess the one thing I would counter with, and you're making me do it here, but I think the biggest issue is that the more you use CEH in the pass game, the less you're able to use him in the run. And the key there, when I say use him in the run, that includes the RPO. Because if Clyde Edward-Helaire is going out on a passing pattern, you really can't hold him in the backfield for that zone read play fake. And a lot of times when they've used him as a receiver, they've gone 5 wide. So there's a trade-off there. The more successful you are with him in the pass game, the more you put him in routes, the less you're able to leverage the RPO, which is one of their more successful plays. There's something to be said that there's still the threat of the RPO in a given play. That's something that could happen. So you've got to scheme as if the RPO might occur. But the linebacker, that's dropping into coverage to deal with the RPO can then fall onto Clyde Edward-Helaire. And I will say that Alabama's pass rush is a lot better than Florida's. So if you're not running the RPO, that's going to let Alabama be more, maybe more aggressive rushing the passer. So that'd probably be my biggest thing. So every time you throw to Edwards-Helaire and you put him out in a pattern, especially split him out wide, if you're in a 5 wide set, you can't run the RPO, and that makes things a lot more open for Alabama in terms of what they want to do defensively.
All right, number 3, this one we saw was why Alabama lost the last time they lost to LSU, and somehow they haven't gotten any better at it. Special teams, we catch a lot of heat because we don't talk a lot about special teams in our computer model. We don't tend to talk that much about special teams on the show, but special teams might be an issue. Alabama's starting kicker, who didn't start off that great, true freshman, has been injured, and they've been going with a guy that could not hit the broadside of a barn for most of he's unreliable. Punting has been a disaster. They think they've found something with the walk-on, but we've got a very small sample size there. So I would argue that in a game like this, and look, I don't think LSU's got a great kicking situation, but in any given game, Alabama's going to have the worst kicking situation. And in this one, I think it will also be the case. Their special teams, at least on the kicking of the ball side, has been a complete disaster this year. What do you say?
First, it's hard to really defend Alabama's kicking game, and I think that's especially troublesome given that the current strategy against the RPO is basically to let the other team advance to the 30 and then hope that you can force a field goal at 30 yards. That's the way Auburn defended LSU. That's the way Clemson defended Alabama. If you got the defense to do it, that's probably the best way. You just assume that if you don't, you're going to give up a touchdown. So you're playing them to a field goal every time. And if the team doesn't have a field goal kicker, which Alabama does not, then you can end up like Clemson, where you're forcing them and trying to 4th down conversions because they have no faith in a kicker. The real only rebuttal here, I will say, is that Alabama's special teams as a whole, you do have to consider, and this is a positive for me when we do the other video, Alabama's return game and Alabama's return defense games are both outstanding. They always have a ton of talent, which means their coverage teams are really good. And Jalen Waddle is leading the country in punt return average, actually by a decent margin. Stingley is no slouch, and Waddle averages over twice the yard per return that Stingley does. So Alabama may not be able to generate points with kicking the ball, but Waddle as a returner can, be successful. I think whenever they're able to, generate a return.
And something you touched on there that is pretty important. These RPO teams do tend to struggle in the red zone. Field gets shorter, which it makes it harder for everybody. But just the nature of the RPO scheme against good defenses, teams struggle in the red zone. We saw that Alabama versus Clemson last year. So if they're also having to kick the ball, it's a little scary. My number 4, LSU has already won a couple of shootouts. People don't consider the Florida game a shootout. I do. It was a 2-score win, and it was a comfortable win. But Florida did have consecutive drives inside the LSU 10 and didn't come away with points. Maybe the second one was because they allowed it, because it was a little bit of prevent situation. But Florida ran up 4 touchdowns in a row, 28 points, and then had opportunity to score even more. And obviously the Texas game to start the season. LSU has been in pressure shootout situations where they can trade points, where their offense has shown when they're put in a hole, they can come back and score and put pressure on you. I said in the preview video, I have some concerns that Alabama might mentally get a little off schedule when they see a team that's offensively capable of scoring on their defense, and it causes them to maybe panic a little bit. I know there's some examples that counter that, but Alabama hasn't had that kind of game yet. And that's not the same thing as saying Alabama hasn't played anybody yet, because I don't think that's a fair criticism of Alabama. We know who they are, and people say that. I don't think that's fair, but I think it is fair to say in terms of a team mentality, they haven't been in a dogfight yet. We don't necessarily know who they are in a dogfight. We know that LSU can win those games. I think that's a plus for LSU, especially going on the road. What say you?
I guess my forced rebuttal to that would be really the fact that LSU may have been the team that's more tested this year, but you can't forget that these players didn't start playing this year for Alabama. They've got a lot of guys that played a lot of football the past couple of years, particularly in the offensive side of the ball. I think defensively, Alabama's green, but offensively, this is almost entirely the same offense that was out there last year. They didn't have a ton of shootouts, but they did have one with Oklahoma. They were able to put that away. They had to come back late in the Georgia game. They had to play 4 quarters against LSU. It's the same guys. And if you're LSU and you remember last year's game, and I'm sure you do, I mean, you know what you're in for when you're playing Alabama's offense. And I don't think Tua is going to suddenly forget the fact that he played in the 2017 national title game just because it was 2 years ago. These guys are actually pretty experienced on Alabama's offense, and in many ways probably more experienced than LSU, even if they haven't been tested this year.
All right, my number 5, LSU is healthier. I think there's still some questions on Delpit. He's going to play, y'all. Tua's going to play. Delpit's going to play. That's going to happen. If you look at Alabama's first practice report coming back after the game against Arkansas, so the first practice report of the bye week, it's a who's who of who's busted up and hurt. Alabama is beat to hell and back, and it's important players. You got Landon Dickerson, the center's hurt. You got Najee Harris, Shaheem Carter. You've got a position that's incredibly thin already, tight end. We find out that their starting tight end got throat punched or something and is out for this game. So for me, I think in a game that's always super physical, and kind of an anecdote of this, I watched a tour of there's a YouTube channel that does a tour of a lot of the facilities, and they did one for Alabama. It was mostly their equipment facilities, and they asked the guy which game from an equipment manager standpoint is the most unique, and he said it's LSU every year for Alabama because we go through more broken chin straps, more messed up helmets, more broken pads. It's a physical game for both these teams every year. Alabama's coming in not super healthy, including Tua. So for me, I think that's a huge plus when you're coming into a game healthier than the other team when you know it's going to be a physical contest.
I think the one thing to counter to that is that I'm not sure Alabama's quite as dinged up as they appear. I mean, when you look at that injury report, I think they were banged up, but I think they were banged up for weeks, and they started pulling those guys out of that Arkansas game because Arkansas is an absolute utter train wreck, and they didn't need him. Najee Harris went out of that game, and he came back. He practiced, a day or two later. Same thing with Devontae Smith. Same thing with the center, et cetera, et cetera. So looking at looked at the injury report for both of these teams, I don't know if Alabama's quite as banged up, and I think they're going to get healthier. But at the end of the day, I do think LSU's getting healthier. I think like Logan and Lawrence haven't been healthy for a while. And coming off the bye, they're probably going to look like themselves the first time in quite a while.
All right, that's our quick, not so quick. We said we're trying to make it 10 minutes. It was not 10 minutes. Our kind of back and forth on why we think, or at least I think, because I picked LSU for this. 5 reasons why LSU is going to Going to hang in there with Alabama, maybe win. Let us know in the comments which of these 5 you think are legitimate. You can even tell us who won the back and forth debate, and give us any of your 5 that we didn't mention. And make sure you check out the Alabama flip side of this video. Get at us. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. Watch the other video. God bless.